Hello everyone. In Souls community many people say Dark Souls 2 is the worst From Software game, and in this plus-minus short video I'll try to explain why nearly all of their critique about this game is either bias or straight up a joke. Let's begin with the most obvious one: bosses and boss fights. Many people say that bosses in this game are a joke. They also say that these bosses have poor moveset and they either repeat themselves over and over or are basic mobs with HP bar. Is this a fair critique? Absolutely yes. But what about, for example, Elden Ring? In the main game of Elden Ring, from 164 bosses, there are only 8 unique bosses, 7 if you combine Radagon and Elden Beast. Well, as far as I can see, many people call it a flawless masterpiece with zero flaws. Nice. Or maybe you want to talk about boss reuses in Sekiro, in which even if you consider Remembrance bosses as true bosses for some reason, half of these bosses are literally the same bosses with small adjustments. Or maybe I should talk about Bloodborne bosses and how almost all of them can be found in chalices. Now about Dark Souls 2 bosses being a joke and about their moveset. Are Dark Souls 2 bosses easy and do they have simple moveset? Yes, in Dark Souls 2 bosses are pretty easy and they objectively have poor moveset, but what about the bosses from Bloodborne? A game in which nearly all bosses are a joke, and a game in which you can, unironically, R1 spam nearly all bosses and stagger them to death. Will someone even say a word about that? Of course no. Or should I say anything about Elden Ring? A game in which Mimic Tear can nearly solo kill any Remembrance boss for you? Or should I mention Bleed and Super Duper Ashes of War, which allows you to delete nearly all bosses? Or should I mention 2 UGS jump spams, which allows you to poison break bosses 24/7? You might say it's not about difficulty, it's about their moveset and fun. Well, okay, sure, that's fair. Let me ask you one question. What do you think about Dark Souls 1, Elden Ring, Bloodborne and Demon Souls bosses? Let's start with Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls. If we don't count a few bosses, on average Dark Souls 1 and especially Demon Souls bosses spam you with the same one move, or they have at best 3 or 4 different moves. If we talk about it objectively, average Dark Souls 2 boss moveset wise is better than the average Dark Souls 1 and especially Demon Souls. In Bloodborne, nearly all bosses are either getting stunlocked to death and die before they can do something, or are straight up brain dead bosses who are absolutely unfun to fight. In Elden Ring, almost every single dipshit has at least 1 or in some cases 3 full HP one-shot moves, and because of that, fighting most of Elden Ring bosses is not the most fun thing to do, because it's not fun to fight a boss and then oops, I got one-shotted from the other side of the map while this boss gives me epilepsy. Amazing boss design. Now let's talk about Dark Souls 2 hitboxes. Many people say that Dark Souls 2 has broken hitboxes, and this is straight up a lie. I'll show you some clips and tell me, are hitboxes of Dark Souls 2 that bad or no? In Dark Souls 2, well, most of the time, there are no bad hitboxes. You just have low invincibility frames because of this dumb mechanic named ADP. But in order to get normal amount of iframes, you need to level up ADP at 25 or 30, which is not the hardest thing to do. Plus, I want to introduce you to Elden Ring and Sekiro, a game in which there is no ADP, therefore hitboxes should be fine. But let's look at those amazing hitboxes. Does. Wow. It actually does. Oh! No comment. Against local Hog Rider, if you don't have a shield, good luck dodging his dumb charge hits and his spear hits will dump hitboxes. Now let's talk about runbacks. Many people felt runbacks in Dark Souls 2 are very long or unfair, and not really. Yes, there are without doubt some long or bullshit runbacks. For example, Dark Lurker, Ancient Dragon, Blue Smelter Demon, and list deep shits. But on average, they are not that bad. Now let's talk about the runbacks in other Souls games. Okay, to be fair, in Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, there are almost non-existing runbacks toward bosses, but in Dark Souls 1 and especially Demon Souls, oh my god, it's not even funny. The runbacks to Queen, Nito, Old Hero, Flame Lurker, Bed of Chaos, Alant, and many more are just nuts. Also, there are a few long runbacks in Bloodborne, for example, Lawrence, Logarius, and Shadows, and my personal thanks to Miyazaki for the Shadows runback, which unironically is twice longer than the fight itself. I have a full video about Dark Souls 2 runbacks, if you want you can check it, but in 2 words, either start bitching about the runbacks in other Souls games or shut the fuck up. Now let's talk about gangbang moments. I will say one thing and you can believe it or no. The amount of basic mobs in each Dark Souls 2 location is no more than the amount of basic mobs in Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. And yeah, it's not a joke. The only reason why you don't realize that is because in Dark Souls 2 basic mobs are just built different. If in other Souls games mobs lose their interest in you pretty fast, in Dark Souls 2 basic mobs just won't leave you alone. They will chase you even if you enter the boss arena. For example, in Iron Keep and in Undead Crypt, when you kill Smelter Demon or Velstad, you should immediately run, because Alon and Vendrick Knights will come for your ass. Plus, I will say 2 things about Dark Souls 2 basic mobs. First of all, in Dark Souls 2, even though mobs have insane aggression and they chase you as if you personally owe them money, you have a shitload of ways to deal with these mobs. Secondly, the amount of time I had to deal with a shitload of mobs in Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne is no less than in Dark Souls 2. For example, Bloodborne, and this moment at the beginning of the game, the road to one reborn will nearly infinity amount of grandmas and possessed werewolves, while some Mamba Jamba is throwing laser beams at you, forest, fishing camlet will these deep shits, and many more. In Dark Souls 1, wave your hand to Bell Gargoyle's runback, your unforgettable journey towards Manus and Tomb of the Giants, in which if you fuck up once, you have to deal with 3 huge skeleton dogs at the same time, and many other examples. Now let's talk about locations. Yes, I completely agree that most locations look very out of place. For example, Hades Tower of Flame and this legendary elevator. And also, yes, I agree that in some locations there are what the fuck moments. For example, this trap chest in Drangli Castle, but I don't agree with the take that this location locations are bad because they have no shortcuts, and that they are more straightforward than locations of Dark Souls 1 and Demon's Souls. I honestly have no clue why locations being straightforward is suddenly such a bad thing. Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro are also pretty straightforward, but did that make locations bad, or did this straightforwardness make these games world less realistic, or did this straightforwardness make this game worse? No? Or let's take Dark Souls 1, and many locations are connected to each other, but did that make things better? No. Yeah, atmosphere and world building wise, it indeed was a good thing, but gameplay wise, holy shit, it is a pure pain in the ass. The lack of bonfires, endless connection and shortcuts, gameplay wise didn't make Dark Souls 1 a good game, because let's say how it is, you just waste a lot of time going back and forward over and over. For example, I wanted to get Zweihander after killing Bell Gargoyles. In order to get it, I had to run to catacombs from Andre, and then after picking this sword, I again had to run to Andre on my foot. Was that interesting and fun gameplay wise? No! And also let's say how it is, because there are so many connections to locations, you are constantly getting lost, or you accidentally go in a place in which you shouldn't go. So I don't think that a lack of shortcuts and way too many bonfires made this game somehow worse. Plus let's say how it is, a game that should get shit on for worse locations is Sekiro. Not because there are no shortcuts or because there are no connections to other locations. No, the problem of Sekiro locations is that there is simply nothing useful that motivates you to explore it. Will anyone even say a word about that? Of course no. Many people are also non-stop shitting on Dark Souls 2 story and lore, but I don't really understand why. Yeah, unlike Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, in which you had to save the world from dying, it's a local story about how a few kingdoms got fucked, and about a dude who wants to cure hollowing, but I don't think that that's a huge problem. Yeah, it has some oopsie moments for sure, and some weird connections to Dark Souls 1, but as a whole, I really don't think that this story is bad. Plus, let's say how it is, it's still better than story of Elden Ring, which is unironically a lazy copy-paste of Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, and the story of Dark Souls 2 is much more interesting than Sekiro, that has one of the most boring story with close to zero interesting characters. Okay, let's have a conclusion. Dark Souls 2 is not a perfect game by any mean. It has a shitload of problems, on which I have a full video, but even as it is right now, it's not as bad as many people say, because almost everything people criticate about Dark Souls 2 can be said about literally every single From Software game besides Dark Souls 3, but I don't see them hating these games, or even daring to criticize some of these games' aspects. Sekiro, Dark Souls 1. I have a full video about Soulsborne games ranking. If you want, you can check how I feel about all these games. Well, that's pretty much it. Type what you think about my video. If you like it, press something under it. Well, I'll say bye bye to you, and I'll see you next time.
I'm impaled by a winged beast of destruction. You see? You can't treat them like equals. They're strapping savages. Kinging's the only thing they know. It's their way. Oh, an angel of mercy will come forward to suck the poison from my healing.